Hiya Mark, lovely to meet up with you once again at the range yesterday and do some further work on your swing after a slight setback during the winter months. Just a quick recap on the key points from the session. The top left here, much better work at setup, particularly from face on. If we look top right, the foot flutter, much better. Knees in a little bit too much. We did discuss that later and you got some physical limitations on that, but we definitely need the knees to be out just a fraction more than we've got them there in light of the movement you're trying to make. So we just have a quick look again at the overall movement. From down the line, what we're seeing is the hands are trying to work in, but unfortunately they're not working in enough. As the club gets rolled behind us, the blade opens and the hands tend to drift up off the hand plane a little bit too early. At this point here, we would like to see the hands more on the belt line and the shoulders should have been tilting downwards more, so the left shoulder tends to work across rather than down and across. Blade opened up in relation to the arc, and this is largely due to what the back of the left hand does. So we're looking at accumulator number 3 and the effect this can have on the takeaway. So we watch the bottom left hand footage. All we're trying to work on now is zero rotation of the back of the left hand from P1 to P2. You can see when you do that, the hands work up hand plane for the appropriate amount of time. The hands should start to elevate from about P2.5 onwards, which you can see there. That's exactly what they do. But the P2 hands should still be on hand plane. The club face is much squarer to the arc of the swing, which now requires less face rotation on the way through. And we're also looking at a shoulder angle that's slightly steeper than what we were seeing at the start of your session. We get rid of those lines now and take a little look as the swing progresses. Shaft slightly inside the ball, hitting you through the middle of the bicep. Touch of a lift there again, slightly inside the ball, hitting you at the middle of the bicep. And I'd like to see the hands in a fraction more at that point. We can work on that in subsequent lessons. That again is largely due to how you're going to load number 3 from P2 onwards. Top of the backswing, a little bit tighter, a little bit more on plane. And then there's the early extension that we tend to get. So we're extending and coming out of flexion a little bit too soon. But having said that, we've not rolled the club behind us quite as much in the early part of the swing, and as a result it's a little bit less behind us as we come into P6. Much less face rotation overall than what we used to get. Can't quite see that one because of the light as you come through this ball. Even though we have face rotation, we have nowhere near as much as we used to have. From face on, foot floor is much better. Knees need to go out more. Now during this piece I'm going to ask you to keep moving the knees out. There you go. And that's you bowing the legs a little bit more. Now as you explained, the problem with your knees, that may be too much of an ask, but I would certainly like to see the knees out a touch more. That's going to allow you to turn. Axis is much more stable than it used to be. It's going to take you to the swing itself. There's not a bad knee position, so the knees are out a little bit more than they were at the start of the piece. Upper axis, nice and stable throughout this swing. There is a slight kinking in of the knee and sagging of the hip from this point to keep you centered, so we don't quite extend as much as we'd like to from maybe P3 to P4. But a far better move. You can see there now, you're getting out in front of it much more. Shaft leaning towards the target a little bit more than it used to. and certainly less face rotation. Previously, instead of the line, if you will, from the end of your grip being at this point, it would have been down here somewhere. So certainly hitting out at the golf ball for longer with a little bit less face rotation. As I said, a lot of good movements in that swing. Hammer away at P1 to P2 between now and when we get together next week. Zero rotation of accumulator number 3. Good luck. Well done.